I love the idea that you're not just respecting the animal, but the environment as well with the sustainable way that you're doing everything. Go ahead, fill me in. I want to hear it all.
Okay. I have a PhD in communication, so I like to tell people I'm a doctor of talking good. And the short version is that as an academic, we have our national conference like most other industries. And as an academic, I was at my national conference for the National Communication Association in 2021 in Seattle.
Mhm.
And in 2020, the state of Washington became one of the first states to legalize natural organic reduction or human composting. And I said, that's weird. I want to learn about it. So my particular niche is environmental communication. I'm pretty granola, pretty crunchy, and I just wanted to learn about that. But they said the tour would only take about an hour, and it was on the other side of Seattle. And I said, well, all right, cool. Are there other folks that I could call? And they said, yeah. And they started giving me some places to call, and we essentially scheduled what I lovingly call the Curtis Sullivan Death Tour. And we went to the first facility that offered the natural organic reduction, the human composting. We went to a facility that does human cremation and human alkaline hydrolysis or aquamation, which is what I now do. And then we went to a place that does a pet funeral home and aquamation, which sounds familiar now because that's what I do now. And the
Mhm.
women that ran it had no background in death care to my knowledge, no background in veterinary care to my knowledge. They just saw an opportunity and a niche and a place for compassion for animals. And I thought that was really fascinating. I went back and taught for a few more years and continued living my life. And at the time, my wife and I were living in Arizona, and we decided to move back to Fargo, North Dakota, where I'd done my PhD. And I spent about a year and a half working for our local Chamber of Commerce, and I realized just the niche of this community that was missing, and something like aquamation was really important. And I thought that would be a great space. So, as the academic I am, I started doing my homework and I started looking at what does this actually look like? I've never started a business, and I was looking at the data of how many animals are in my community. So based on census data and whatnot, I worked with our small business development center for the state, and we were able to get some really good data about not just how many households, but how many households identify as having pets or having more than one pet, et cetera. And when I crunched the numbers based on average lifespans, it's like something to the tune of like 9,500 animals or so, dogs or cats, are going to pass away every year based on our population, just in our community. And we really only have one cremation option, and they've been operating unopposed for 30 years. And I thought there's a really interesting space. If people think that they have one choice, also in our community in Fargo, North Dakota, we have about 100 days a year below freezing. So even if you own your home, which only 55% of our population does, that means 45% of the population doesn't own a home, which means they can't dig that hole theoretically. And it also means that 100 days a year, even that 55% that owns their home probably can't dig that hole. And so, what do we do with our animals? And that kind of leads us to having a monopoly on like flame-based cremation for animals. And I thought that even more lent itself to my need to do this. And on March 1st of 2023, I'd already done a lot of the homework and groundwork to get us going, but I left my job at the Chamber of Commerce, which I did enjoy quite a bit. But I wanted to set out on this so that I could put my money where my mouth is and live a sustainable life that where I engaged in a business that could do as many good things as I could possibly figure out. So, aquamation, alkaline hydrolysis, to the short version, is that this is an aftercare option that requires about 10% of the energy as traditional flame-based cremation. And we don't think about that a lot because flame-based cremation has a big old incinerator, and
Mhm.
often they put multiple animals on a big slab. It's usually like a stainless steel, pretty resistant piece, but they might have some partitions to separate them. But essentially, they need to keep that at about 14 to 1500 degrees for 2 to 3 hours, depending on how big of an animal is in there. Some people use diesel, some people use natural gas, but ultimately, for 2 to 3 hours at 1500 degrees, that's a tremendous amount of carbon emissions. And regardless of your politics, left, red, blue, we've all been in a car in the winter and seen coming out of a tailpipe. And
Mhm.
imagine that every time they turn on that incinerator, statistically is comparable to a 500-mile car trip. Every time.
Wow, wow.
And so
And
if
not
we're
everybody wants their animal to be cremated as a group. A lot of
right,
them like their animal cremated alone. So I
right.
imagine that just creates even
Yeah.
more and more.
And in a lot of cases, let's say they have 5 to 10 cats for example, and they all want that individual. A
Mhm.
standard crematorium is going to honor that. If you have a flat slab, right, with kind of stainless steel mesh underneath or whatever, they might do a little partition, but there's still like a lot of motion and air, and there is a great possibility for cross-contamination. And that's no slight to them. I'm not trying to be a grouch about that industry, but the likelihood of you having your animal alone in the incinerator is unlikely in most
I
cases.
never even thought about that,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
That's just how ignorant I am about the industry. But I thought when you selected that, your animal, we had a pet die October 31st last year.
Mm.
Our ashes are right downstairs.
Sure.
And I thought that's all that's in that box is
Right.
just my little Poe. But you're
Yeah.
probably right. I never thought about that.
I don't mean to, I'm going to change your perspective just a little bit more. Your concept of ashes is also very likely incorrect because most people think about ashes because we've seen a fireplace and we think about, oh, when we have our fireplace, the ashes are like that wood residue, right? What's actually your animal's ashes is their bones because all that organic material goes up. All that organic material, their skin, their tissue, their fur, it goes up into the air. And what's left is their bones. And those bones are then pulverized with a machine called a cremulator. It's like a hardcore version of what is under your kitchen sink, the disposal
Mhm.
unit. It just doesn't go out, it stays in there and it spins it around. And then that's put into a bag and that's put into the urn that you have, et cetera. And so a
So
lot of people
that's
think,
your ashes. It's
yeah,
really not.
right, it's bone material. And so we actually give people ashes as well. It's the same. Ours is actually not just mine, but like aquamation ashes, traditionally about 10 to 20% more than flame-based cremation. And chemically, they should be about 99% plus calcium phosphate, which means, unlike flame ashes, which are actually not very good for environmental spaces, if you spread the ashes, in a lot of cases, particularly if you do it in a concentrated place like in your garden, that can have a really high pH and can damage your soil. With ours, especially in moderation, this can help your soil. A lot of plants, tomatoes are a great example, need additional calcium for healthy growth. And
Mhm.
so depending on your ecosystem and stuff like and what you're trying to grow, this can be tremendously helpful. That being said, most people don't spread them. Most people keep them in their urn or keep that on the mantle, etc. It's a lighter color. It's closer to powdered sugar or flour is what you would see. I don't know if you've looked at the ashes of your pet that
Mhm.
you say goodbye to.
Mhm.
I imagine they're a darker gray, a little flakier, bigger pieces. Ours are much finer and it's a lighter color. Again, it'll be a little gray version of what you would see as flour.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
Does it cost the client more to do the aquamation as opposed to a
Yeah,
cremation?
great questions. In your email, you said you were curious about like pricing. This is a little bit of a tale, so if you want to stay with me, I want to answer that question, but we're going to come around to answer it with my favorite answer as an academic. It depends. So stay with me.
Perfect. Let's go.
When I opened this business, again, homework, right? I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. The aftercare industry is so cloak and dagger. There's like all this clandestine stuff of trying to keep it secret and finding crematoriums or aquamation providers like me that actually publish their prices is very hard. There's probably 100 to 150 people doing essentially what I do around the country. Some of those are directly within a vet clinic, others are independent operators like me, but there's only really three manufacturers in the world of the technology to do what I do. And so the one in Danville, Indiana, has a pretty good beat on who in the United States offers this, right? Because they're the ones selling most of the machines in the United States. So that being said, I was able to track down a dozen, 2 dozen people that do what I do. And even in the aquamation space, I really only found about 10 that published their prices. And I thought that was really interesting. But when I found them publishing their prices, everyone that I found that does publish is based on weight. So it's like they will, and crematoriums are the same. So when we see, if you had to say goodbye to your friend, I'm going to imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, that happened at a vet clinic.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I bet when you were at that vet clinic, unless I'm wrong, which I'm probably not, you were shown based on the weight of your animal, it was going to cost you this much if you wanted the ashes back or not. Sound familiar? So I want you to think about that for a moment. When 20% of my business is direct to customer, not at the veterinary clinic, 80% is at the vet clinic. That means 20% of the families I serve probably call me up. and say, how much does it cost? And they're crying and they're having a bad day. My
Mm.
dog just died. How much does it cost? And imagine this nice, handsome person on the other side says, how much do they weigh? And that is such a stupid way to do business for me. I don't love it.
So
So,
insensitive. Yeah.
what's that?
So insensitive.
It is. It is. And for my first 6 months of operation, that's what I was doing because that's what I thought was the industry standard. And to be fair, it is the industry standard. And so what I did and we'll come back to that in a moment because I did make a big change. So my first 6 months, 7 months actually, I operated under a very specific protocol based on weight. And what I had done to set that is I looked across the country and the few places I could find that published their aquamation rates and the few places I found that published their cremation rates, which was even less easy to find because that's very clandestine, is I made a spreadsheet because I love spreadsheets and I put 7 different aquamation providers that I could find their pricing into that from different metros. So I wanted to triangulate because something in Seattle is going to cost something very different than rural Missouri. So I looked at that and I put all that in a spreadsheet and I was looking at averages. And what I was finding is the price differentiations are wildly inconsistent. Some people are like 0 to 50 pounds, this dollar. Some people are like 0 to 5 pounds, this dollar, 5 to 10. And so breaking that down was really annoying to say the least. But once I did that and I found some good categories where I could put things in and get some good numbers, I revealed that on average, the national average of aquamation of what I do was double what my local crematorium charged on average in that way, in those same weight categories. And I was like, there's no way I can come out in a red leaning state with an environmental approach and then charge double and think that
Right.
I'm going to survive. And also I was looking at the overhead and how much it cost me and I said realistically I don't need to charge double. I'm not going to be successful if I do that. So then I looked at my local crematorium, which I would not have been able to find that, except I do have an insider as my wife is a veterinarian who owns her practice. So I was able to get those actual numbers of what our local crematorium charges. And I set mine generally within the same parameters, but about 10% more because I am a new business. And I was like, I need to pay
Yeah.
bills, right? This is new and I need to pay bills, but I can't price myself out of being a possibility. And
Right.
so after 6 months, I was doing about 20 animals a month on average, and I was helping 120 families in 6 months. And I looked at my numbers and I said, you know what? Let's break this down. Let's be very honest about this. And what I found was that my average weight was 33 pounds. So I was putting a lot of energy into the rare 100 plus pound dog. Out of 120 animals, less than 10 of them were over 90 pounds. So
Mhm.
I'm doing many cats and chihuahuas for every Rottweiler. You know what I mean? And so I was looking at that, I was like, yes, I make more on the Rottweiler, but it does cost me a little bit more. And I'm really only doing this because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. So I'm
Mhm.
looking at that average weight of 33 pounds and then looking at what is the average purchase people are making. And honestly, out of 120 families served in the first 6 months, only 17 declined the ashes. So that's telling me most people want the ashes back, and the 17 out of 120 that don't, rarely was it a price point. In those cases, it was like an active thing. I got a call today from an 88-year-old man, and he is declining the ashes because I'm going to die soon. Why would I want them? And
What,
I'm like,
yeah. Gonna will them to my child? What are they gonna do with them?
yeah, absolutely. And that's more often the case is I don't have space. I don't want them because I don't want to remember that. I don't want to remember the sad time. Most people want them because they think they should. Okay, I'm happy to support that. And then also they don't know what else to do. And I was looking at it with 33 pounds and most people want those ashes back. I don't need to have this complex grid based on weight. I don't because while I might lose a little bit more money on the big Rottweiler or the 180-pound Great Dane that we had to say goodbye to last week and help them with. I might not make as much on that, but you know what? I'm also going to make up for that with some of the smaller animals. So I changed my prices on June 1st of this year to a good, better, best, which in the service industry, I believe that is our best approach because we often over menu people and they get overwhelmed with choices.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you want those ashes, like I'm 100, 150, 225. And if it's a chinchilla or a Rottweiler, I'm going to charge you the same because I
Mhm.
don't think love has a weight limit. And honestly, like realistically, if you have a Rottweiler, you've been paying more the entire life of that animal just to keep it alive than
Right.
if you've had a chinchilla. And yeah, for me, it was just that kind of honesty of let's be on the same page together. And so at $100, no ashes back. It's still individual. We still care for your animal with love and
Mhm.
respect all the way through. At 150, you get those ashes back. You get a paw print and a hair clipping and a sympathy card. And because I'm sustainable, I also didn't want to just give people the ashes back in a Ziploc bag or in a
Right.
tin. So
Yeah.
on top of that, I have biodegradable Ziploc bags that are important to me because I try and be sustainable. But I also taught myself how to sew. And I bought a sewing machine because Joanne was going out of business. And at first, I borrowed a neighbor's because a friend of mine had a sewing machine that she never uses. So I borrowed it for the first couple of months. And I went to the thrift store and I bought some bed sheets. And then one of my first clients donated a lot of dog centric fabric to me. And then one of the local clinics donated me a whole tote of scrubs they weren't using anymore. And so probably once every 2, 3 weeks, I just sit down in my basement, I turn on TV and I just and I sew cloth bags of upcycled materials. And then I have various sizes so that if I have a big Rottweiler that's going to be a very large bag of material, I have big and small things. And so part of my day, for example, yesterday and then again tomorrow, is I take my big old plastic bag full of cloth bags and I go through my tracking and I cremulate those bones down to the ash material and I put them in their packages and I wrap them up in nice little things to bring back to the clinics or to the families.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love
So
that. That's
uh,
really interesting.
I
I
can
didn't
say
even know that was an option. I have never heard of it before.
yeah, thank you. And that's for me as an entrepreneur and as a person who just, I hate the status quo. I hate that we do so many things because we think we're supposed to, because we think
Yes.
that's the way it's supposed to go. I really like to push those boundaries and see where, not where I can get away with things, but where I can do something special that adds a little flavor to it. And you know what? I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think the imperfections of my little cloth bags are some of the things that make them special because
That's what makes it endearing.
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's not just some box that
Yes.
somebody got from Lowe's or somewhere. You
Yeah.
put love and time and
Yeah.
effort into it. I
Yeah.
love that. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. I try very hard. I work with one big company in Minneapolis for custom urns and whatnot because people also do some traditional things.
Mhm.
And but they're really good because they can do a custom piece usually within 4 or 5 business days. And so
Mhm.
if someone orders that up front, we can get that here by the time the whole process is done and get the animal back in that within my 7 to 10 day that I tell my clients and customers. But honestly, not a lot of people take me up on that. Honestly, I sell less urns than I probably should. I think I'd probably make a little bit more money if I pushed urns more, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot with the cloth bags. Anyway, so I do have some larger corporate pieces, but I also have a couple of things on my website that are one of a kind. So I work with a friend of mine who's a woodworker in Orlando. He works for Disney. And I called him up when I started my business, said, "Do you want to make some urns?" And he said, "Okay." And he made about a dozen boxes that are one of a kind. Another friend of ours that loved my dog in Arizona when we lived there, he's a woodworker that does like a lathe. He is
Mhm.
turning wood, and he
Mhm.
made me 4 or 5 one-of-a-kind pieces. There's a company in Miami that does American beeswax urns that are also a planter and a woodwick can. They're really beautiful
Oh,
pieces.
wow. That sounds interesting too.
Yeah, so I try and work with local or just individual artists as often as I can. I try and work with sustainable pieces as often as I can. And I'm not perfect. I'm a human being that like has to live in America where we have to do things that aren't always sustainable, but where I can, when I can, I try and do the right thing as far as the
Yeah.
environment's
Yeah.
concerned.
Are there a lot of regulations that you have to follow?
No, no, there's not.
I'm
It's a wild west,
surprised.
if I'm being honest. I was surprised too. So I originally had to fill out a city wastewater application for industrial waste, and then when I filled that out with my community based on, and I didn't know that information, so I actually called the manufacturer of the machine. They were awesome to work with, and we did a Zoom call like this, and I did a screen share, and she helped me fill out the packet online because she knows like what's the standard pH coming out of the machine, et cetera. So we did that, and then I filed that with the city, and the city said, Cool, great, no problem. Because what's coming out of our machine, now this is another benefit from the environmental approach. So on average, the average US household uses about 325 gallons of water per day on average.
A lot.
It is. But we think about dishwasher,
Yeah.
laundry,
Yeah.
watering our lawns in America. There's a lot of water that we use on average. And so, on average, the US household about 325 gallons, according to the EPA in 2019. I use around 225 to 250 gallons of water every time I turn on my machine. Where am I going with that? Oh, yeah. So the wastewater, the effluent that comes out, so that is a little high in pH, but not problematically so. We're well within the parameters that the city wants. But what comes out is predominantly water, the potassium hydroxide, which is the alkaline chemical that we use for aquamation, but the corrosive nature of that degrades over time. So after the 18-hour cycle, it is not dangerous, it's not corrosive anymore, but it is high in potassium. So we have water, potassium. Our bodies have a good amount of magnesium and nitrogen. And those four things are fertilizer. And
Yes.
so that goes into my city's wastewater. There's certainly like the fats and the oils also as part of those bodies that go into it. But overall, a lot of particularly urban communities, their wastewater system benefits from aquamation operations in their community because it actually starts breaking up some of the other problematic stuff in the wastewater and the nitrogen and magnesium and the all the other things that are coming out with that water help
Mhm.
break up some of those problematic pieces as well. My goal actually long term is to collect that, not put it in the wastewater, and then North Dakota is responsible for about 2% of our national GDP through agriculture. And we're
Mhm.
also in a fertilizer shortage internationally. And so my goal is actually how can we sell this as liquid fertilizer? And I'm working with a local ag tech nonprofit to try and track down how we can do that
Well, you
sustainably.
have big plans.
Yeah,
Yes.
hopefully. We'll find out, right?
Yes.
Because if I can also do that, then I can reach out to other operators. There's one about 3 hours away from me. There's one in Omaha. That's about 8 hours. So if we can get a structure and a path to this of,
Mhm.
okay, on a base coming out of our machines is going to be about this window. What do we need to add on average to make it legally liquid fertilizer? And then what
Mhm.
are reasonable practical ways to get that liquid fertilizer distributed? Because the weight of liquid fertilizer, you think about a 250-gallon tank getting
Mhm.
transported, then we do start losing some of that sustainability. And most farmers want a dry fertilizer that they can mix with water more effectively. So
Right.
that's where we're on some of the hangups, but we continue to try and do good.
Wow. Do you find that people are traveling to see you to do this, that they understand what you're doing, they're aware of this option, and they're coming to you?
Yes, actually, one of my earlier customers drove more than 3 hours from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, with a tiny little wonderful Chihuahua to say goodbye. And they also have a younger Chihuahua that they probably have another 5, 6, 7 years with. And they actually pre-purchased my services for when that animal's going to go
Oh,
as well. Last weekend, I had a family from Bismarck, North Dakota, again, about 3 hours west of here, that came in for two of their animals, one of which had recently passed. Another one had passed a few years ago that they'd just been storing and wanted to do something with. But we made a really special thing for them. They came in and they had brought their own clay to make their own clay prints. They came in with an 8-year-old daughter that hasn't really experienced death yet, and they'd
mhm.
had the animal covered. So they had the talk in my place of business with their 8-year-old kiddo. So that was a really special time. We have seen that. I have had, when I was very new in this past November, I got a call from someone who had was boarding their dog 4.5 hours away from here on the other side of North Dakota. And just, it was an awful situation. I did charge about $100 to go collect that animal, but I personally drove 4.5 hours to go pick up that animal, bring it back, and take care of it. So it is getting out.
Do you do any advertising?
I try and be very organic with it. I haven't done any paid advertising. I have paid a local media company to make me about seven 30 to 60-second videos that are well shot. And that was just to support a local business and also get some nicer stuff. For me, I do have an advertising budget, but my advertising and marketing budget is primarily dedicated to vet clinics. So in my community, we have about 250,000 people, about 120,000 homes, and we have 12 vet clinics in my metro. And so I'm currently working with six. when I proposed my pricing changes, I did bring them in on that topic. And I said, again, there's a lot of clandestine stuff, right? The crematorium doesn't want to publish their prices because the vet clinics don't want them to. The vet clinics,
Oh, I see where you're going.
and this is no slight to them, right? They are still providing a service. But from the vet clinic perspective, let's say I charge $60 for an animal up to $50 or up to 50 pounds to the vet clinic, right? They are most likely going to double that and charge you, the customer, 120. And from their perspective, it's okay, our team is going to collect that paw print, they're going to do a hair clipping, they're going to bag them up, etc. But they're also like, just by nature of capitalism,
Mhm.
is we're going to upcharge that, and usually it's 100% markup. And when I started, that was my biggest pushback from the clinics, is I published my prices originally because I said I want to work with customers. I have about 1,000 square feet of my space dedicated to feel like a funeral home. It's got green, it's got artificial turf and handmade by me picnic tables and benches and a white picket fence inside to feel like a park to say goodbye to our friends, right? And so they didn't like that. They said, I had presented to them, here's what I charge the customer, and here's what I'm going to charge you. I'm going to charge you at discounted rate because ultimately, like, you're my client, they're my customers, right? Clients are those long-term relationships that we have where we see them a couple times a year. I want my vet clinics to want to work with me, but they're like, we make less profit with you because you publish your prices. And they had no incentive as a business to prioritize me, right? So when I did my price change to that good, better, best approach, I went to them and said, listen, this is going to impact us. I recommend, because I'm not going to tell you to run your business, but I recommend you do what I do and just do my 150 and 225 package, because at the 150, you're doing nothing different. And I propose to my clinics, to your point of marketing, basically a subscription service. So instead of charging per animal, I threw out, okay, here's a good, better, best for you for $500 a month or so. I will take care of up to 9 animals.
Mhm.
Now, if we think about that, that's about $45 an animal. Again, regardless of chinchilla or big Rottweiler, I'm going to charge you that $500. And now you are incentivized to send me 9 animals so that you can maximize that profit. And 2 of my clinics took me up on that in the first month. One of them maxed it out, did all 9 animals. The other one did 8 out of 9. And then that next month, the clinic that got 9, they were at number 9 on day 7 of July this month. And so they called and said, can we go up? And I said, of course you can. I'll always take more money, right? But it was like, for 500, we'll do 9 animals. For 850 or 900 or whatever, we'll do 19 animals. And so again, that good, better, best, because right now as a new business, I need good stories. I need good experiences. I
Right,
need their
right.
customers to be happy. And instead of this clandestine marking up, we're going to be quiet about our prices. Oh, just do the 150 and the 225 like I'm going to do. And if you want that, if the customer wants the 225 package with all this extra stuff, I'm going to do all that extra stuff. You're going
Mhm.
to do nothing different. You're just going to make more money and save money.
Mhm. Oh yeah, everybody's happy.
Yeah. And but that was just because a night where I could not sleep and was like, how do I make more money? And that's when I
You
crunched my
have such an
numbers.
entrepreneurial spirit. You can see it all over you. I love it.
Thanks, thanks. I feel like I've done all the talking purpose of this, but what questions do you have? I feel like I've really overshared, but tell me, what do you
No, you haven't overshared at all. I honestly was not prepared because I don't know anything about aquamation and it came up so quickly. So
Sure.
I did just some quick kind of search and let me see if there's anything in here that you haven't really talked about. Do you have employees or is it just you?
No, just me currently. Solopreneur, every step of the way, whether it's sewing bags, packing orders, designing my website, all my marketing material, all the physical things I built. It is 100% me. My awesome wife does come by and help me here and there for a little bit. She's also a veterinarian. And so one of the other services that we offer is we have an on-site comfort room. Going back to your story, you said you said goodbye to a friend. You did that in a vet clinic. Most clinics, depending on the size, but most clinics have one room dedicated to that. They call it comfort room. And while these are anecdotes, I now have 13 different anecdotes just from my community and 7 from around the country from friends and family of people that change their veterinarian afterwards, not because bad service, not because of a bad experience, but because let's say you have 2 dogs. I see you have 2 cats, right?
Yes.
Yeah. 4. Oh, I see 2 of them. But let's say it's time to say goodbye to a friend at the end of the month, at the end of August. And that's going to be hard, right? You're going to go to the vet clinic and you're going to cry and have feelings. And then in September, you're going to need to do your annual for another cat. And we are seeing people tell me directly, I changed vets not because of bad service, but because I could not walk in the door. I
I
got
can
to the
totally
parking.
see that. I can
Yeah,
totally see that.
yeah.
Yes.
And our community is big enough to support a mobile euthanasia clinic. And so there is a woman in Fargo, and she works at a vet clinic. She's a veterinarian, but she also has a mobile, her own LLC to go to people's homes and help say goodbye. But also then you have your animal and you had this traumatic, awful experience in your living room. And you're
Oh,
probably going to
yeah.
watch TV tomorrow in your living room, right? Why traumatize your home? Why traumatize your relationship with your veterinarian? There's no reason that you would have to come back to my space next month to socialize. And that's what we're doing. And actually, we've helped 3 families with that and a 4th one next week.
Do you do the euthanasia yourself,
No,
or they
no,
bring in the animal after it's already passed?
no, they bring in the animal alive, but they let me know in advance. And my first step is always to call their veterinarian. So I have a form on my website and we talk about it. I'm going to call your vet first and I'm going to see if this is something they're willing to do. Because my goal is actually to build a vet for that and
Mhm.
say the comfort room is at this point like a flat 50 to the vet. And then that's going to include the aquamation as well. So 50 plus the aquamation of the animal, not
Mhm.
based on weight. And if they're not working with me, it's a flat 125 to them. So now it's 175 to them. And they can work that out with the client because it is a kind of a luxury service where if it's a vet I'm not working with, essentially I'm going to invite them to my space. We'll schedule a time. They will come with the drugs to do that. It's an anesthetic that takes about 10-15 to kick in, and
Mhm.
then the material to do that. And that they have a price, and that's all based on weight. And I can't change that. I don't want to change that. But if they're not willing to work, if that vet's not willing to work with me, then I call my wife's clinic, and we have a protocol set in place for that. So then that family, they do $100 deposit. We get a hold of their vet. We get those records transferred, and then my
Mhm.
wife's clinic will come in and do it. And so they show up with that. But it's also better because some vets do offer at-home euthanasia, including our mobile vet, but then they have to take the animal out of the home. They have to get it to the crematorium or to me. And most vets don't want to drive around town with a dead animal in their car, right?
Yeah, I
They just
can't
don't want
imagine
that.
anybody that would want to do that. Yeah.
Correct. And I don't love that aspect, but it is something that I do home
Something, yeah,
pickups as well and
yeah.
whatnot. So I've been to 30 different homes in this community since opening, and usually it's after the fact, like my pet has passed away, or we've worked with the mobile euthanasia provider, and we'd like you to come pick up on Thursday at 4 p.m. kind of thing.
Is your business where you want it to be now, or are you hoping in 6 months, 12 months, you'll be looking at a different type of business, a different size, different?
Oh, I am currently operating at about what I believe to be about half my full capacity as far as like the aquamation aspect. Now, I'm in there every day doing stuff and I'm new and I've again tried to be sustainable. I've created pinch points for myself that I didn't know I was creating of not enough space for this thing. We can get to that in a moment if you'd like. And so that's part of the refining entrepreneurial nature is like, how do we alleviate those pinch points? How do we open that up a little bit? So with some minor tweaks, I could easily do, not easily, but with minor tweaks, I could do about 20 or about 2 times the volume I'm doing now. And looking at my overhead, I'm still a new business. And under the old pricing model, I knew exactly how many I needed to hit that marker of break even for overhead. And we're
Mhm.
not there yet. July has been my best month for sure. I only opened on Halloween this year officially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm at gosh, 9 months of being open, November,
Mhm.
December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So yeah, nine
Yeah.
months, 9 months of being open. And they say you're not going to pay yourself for a year. And so far that is true. But we're getting there and we'll see once July kind of shakes out because 2 of my vets took that tiered model. And if I can get 2 more to do that, I should be pretty okay.
Oh, yeah, you'll have that recurring
Mhm.
revenue that is so important. And then,
Yes.
of course, you'll have your 20% of clients that call you
Yep.
directly.
Yep.
That
Yeah,
is,
and that's all good. So I'm also trying to like diversify some of that. So I'm trying to push that comfort room more.
mm,
Also going back to artists and whatnot, I have a local photographer that does senior pet photography, and because my space is meant to feel like a park, we do offer that on my website as well. They book with me, I reach out to the photographer, we finalize the schedule, but then they can bring their older pet or young pet, I don't care, especially in the winters in Fargo and get that kind of summery vibe. I have a lot of live
yeah,
plants in my space. I just bought a lighting setup so that the crappy LEDs in my shop don't make it look bad.
yeah.
But yeah, so we have an opportunity to do better pictures. I work with a local musician. Again, good, better, best. We have a 30-second minute and a 2+ minute song option. So if you want to commemorate your animal in a song rather than just pictures. Just Monday, I had a local painter in my shop, and so I have a couple of that painter's pieces up, but he's working on how do we look at what are his prices going to be to commission unique one of a kind paintings for pets.
You
So
have a
whether it's
whole like celebration of life.
that's right. I
It's
don't
so
say this
beautiful.
directly to my customers, but my goal is to be that one-stop shop for saying
Yes.
goodbye.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. What do you see as the bottlenecks in your business right now?
Yeah. I mentioned part of it is some spatial aspects. So with aquamation, the biggest difference in process as far as what anyone would even conceptually understand is unlike flame-based cremation, I have a drying time period because we use hot water and potassium hydroxide, pressure and time. That water is about 205 degrees for the process. So it's not boiling. Boiling happens at 212. Fun fact. We are just shy of boiling. It's actually technically a simmering temperature is what's happening during that time frame. And so then when that's done, my machine empties and I rinse off the bone remains and then I dry them. And again, sustainability, what I did to create my drying unit, some people do a convection oven in their space because that air and that heat really speeds up that process. But that's also, again, very energy invasive. And also, it's 90 degrees and humid up here. I don't want that going in my shop. I'm
Oh,
already
please.
sweating. Yeah.
I'm in Mississippi. 90 degrees
Yes.
and humid is nothing.
Uh, good point. But so what I did was I have a big piece of machinery called a gantry crane, and I have this like 8, 9 foot tall box that's relatively skinny. And what I did was I coated the inside of that in vinyl that I got from that used to be billboards. So
Mhm.
billboardvinyl.com or whatever sells decommissioned billboard material. So to keep some of that moisture in and to keep smell controlled, I built basically a drying unit out of this long, skinny box. And then at the top, I have a hardcore fan unit that is designed actually for cannabis growth. Fun fact. And because cannabis, when you grow it, really wants to have like specific parameters. So I have this really hardcore fan and a heater, and all of that's connected to a little tiny Raspberry Pi computer that has an app on my phone. And then there's a little probe in that box. And so that box that I've created that's lined in vinyl and has drying racks in it, that is essentially, if you think of a food dehydrator, a really big one of those. So heat comes in
Mhm.
the bottom and it works its way up. And then there's a huge fan up top with a charcoal filter for smell control. And
Mhm.
that goes right outside my building. And so that is a pinch point and a slowdown. So I can do 14 individual animals or 550 pounds or really any in
Mhm.
between of those, the way that my machine's set up. So my machine has two very large baskets, and each basket has 7 spaces that can be partitioned, kind of like Tetris in a way. So
Mhm.
if I have a 50-pound dog and a 5-pound cat, I can still do them individually where water. I don't know if you have a hypersonic cleaner in your house for like jewelry or something.
Mhm.
If you think about that visually, the bottom of that should have like small holes about the size of a pencil eraser and stainless steel. Okay.
Yes.
So inside my machine, these big baskets, the top and bottom are those very small holes the size of a pencil eraser and thousands of holes just through it. That's the mesh on the bottom. So very little material can get out of that. And then when we put the animals in, we have full stainless steel partitions. So I can say I have this week I had that family from Bismarck with two animals. They had an 80-pound dog and then a 10-pound dog. So the 80-pound dog took up six of those spaces. I put the partition up and then the 10-pound dog on the far side so that we can say there isn't that cross contamination. That
Oh,
animal is staying in their space entirely because there's also a lid on that so that the only cross contamination is the size of a pencil eraser. You know what I mean? Like very tiny amount, and that's for the water and the potassium hydroxide to get through. There's
mhm.
also an agitator on the side of the machine that moves the water in a kind of a vertical circle, essentially. So over 18 hours, that degrades that organic material, leaving us with the bone matter. I rinse that and then I have to dry it. And that's the biggest pinch point right now is I don't have enough drying space. So my wife actually has this week off of work and I am commissioning her help tomorrow to build a new drying unit with some of the parameters we have. So we're going to just put together another one, build something a little bit more simple but larger that's going
Mhm.
to hopefully double our drying space because that's the pinch point right now.
And how long does it take for the bones to dry? When you put them in that space, how long does it take?
It depends. It depends. If, let's say, I do a lower load, because my machine I can do, remember I said I had two baskets on top of each other
Mhm.
within it.
Mhm.
So if I'm not going to use the top basket, because let's say I've only get 4 or 5 animals this week and they're all cats, right? And I want to be thoughtful and get those back in time. I can run a lower load. And if I have less matter in the drying rack, it can be done in honestly 5, 6 hours. If this week I ran my largest load with a grand total of, I think it was like 312 pounds in this larger load, that has taken a full 24 hours. So actually, I have on my phone that app or that machine I have for the drying unit, it actually has a app on my phone so I can also see where that humidity is and what the temperature is in the machine.
And you can keep it, can you adjust it from that app?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow,
can
that's cool.
also set it for a line graph. I'll show you this so you can get an idea. I actually just about an hour ago I turned off the machine, but the blue line in the middle is the humidity and the red line is the heat. So I can also see where that humidity is because ultimately it's going to get to the ambient humidity of
Mhm.
our area. And
Mhm.
once it's matched that and it stays there, it's going to fluctuate a little bit just because the
Yeah,
heat turns on and then turns off, turns on, turns off, etc. So once it's at that leveled out place, that's when I know we're dry. And
yeah.
so that's just part of my daily routine, checking in on that. Usually I check at about 12 and 18-hour increments and just see where we're at. And once we hit that, I either turn it off or I just leave the fan on and turn the heater off kind of. But I
Mhm.
can do all
Mhm.
that from my phone.
That's really cool. Who knew a PhD in communications would have this kind of experience and entrepreneur?
Even that, like that was a buddy of mine in Arizona where you can legally grow cannabis, was like, I was just talking to him on the phone and about like things I was working on. He's like, "Have you thought about this?" And I was like, "Tell me about it." And he
Yeah.
showed me that company that made that device because
Uh-huh.
it's really meant for like keeping appropriate levels for growth of cannabis. I was
Right.
like, "Thank you, hippie friend of mine. I
Yes,
appreciate
yes.
you." Right?
It
Like,
almost reminds me of brewers when they're
yeah.
here and they have the apps that tell them exactly what
Yeah.
temperature and what's going on in the bit. It's really cool.
My biggest overhead that is in any way dynamic, right? Because water and power and natural gas are insanely cheap if in the grand scheme of things. My really only dynamic overhead is my potassium hydroxide, and that I have a cheat sheet. So when I load my machine, I weigh everybody on the way in. Just even though vet clinics and customers fill that out, I want to be exact. It's
Mhm.
exact. But I have a cheat sheet provided by the manufacturer that's nice and laminated. I keep it with all of my papers. I'm a pretty organized person. But that tells me how much potassium hydroxide I need. And so it's got a nice little printed spreadsheet. So based on the load that I'm running, if I have 100 pounds of animal material, I need
Mhm.
X pounds of potassium hydroxide. And so that's also really helpful as far as a pinch point is I came very close to running out of potassium hydroxide, but I was able to get it just in time. That being said, is that does fluctuate a little bit, and that is actually one of the biggest hazards. It's probably the only other regulation I have is legally I can have as much as I want of this corrosive material when it's wet, but I can't drive with more than 1,000 pounds. Yes,
Oh,
I'm
I see.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, I see. So you can keep it on hand, just a matter of getting it.
Yeah. So
Um,
you have to have someone with a CDL legally deliver it. So I can't like run to the hardware store and get it. It's also hard to come by.
you're not going to head down to the local Walmart and grab that.
Yeah, probably not get hundreds of pounds of potassium hydroxide flakes.
No.
Uh,
I have so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you
yeah.
so much for hopping on with me last minute, and I really enjoyed learning about it.
Yeah. Have I answered your questions? You feeling good about it?
You
Okay.
have, yes. I'm sure I may come up with some later. So if you don't mind me reaching back out to you,
Of
that would
course,
be
you're very
great.
welcome to. Happy to continue educating people because my core values of my business are empathy, environmental stewardship, and education.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Of course, look forward to it. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye.